Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the professor, and we are not going to be doing this all week long, but I felt the need to put a bookend on this particular subject, and I think this is the perfect place to do it. Now, before we get started, let me go ahead and preface this by saying there are a good number of on-code Somalians, in fact, a good number of on-code folks from Africa and the Caribbean. This isn't aimed at them. But it needs to be said, the entire reason this is going on is because there is a problem with the attitude of the majority, and that's what needs to be dealt with because you can't have an alliance with only a few folks. So for the folks out there who keep pretending like they just don't know why the FBA community is delineating, here's yet another example for you.
Most of the people that we meet, especially African Americans, they don't even know their fathers. They don't even know their fathers. It was all of them, most of them were the product of one night stand. One night stand. They would tell you, I don't know my father. But who named you? Whose name are you carrying? Well, my mother chose his name for me. I don't know. Is that what we want for our ummah? No. كلهم أو معظمهم أبناء الزنا. Abna is zina. Why? Because man, he has to give up the seed. And because the marriage will limit them, they will go from one to another to a third. You know, subhanAllah, it's one of the African American.
I guess in Somalian circles, this is what qualifies as a man of God. This Somalian imam is laughing and smiling, talking trash about black Americans. He just gets a giggle out of that. That just tickles him no end. Meanwhile, his own people are suffering. The numbers of Somalian war orphans dwarfs his made-up talking points about black Americans. But this is what he chose to prioritize in an alleged house of God. This is what the Sunday sermon is at his mosque. Of course, the tethers and foreign flags, they don't dare call this divisive. This kind of talk is not divisive at all, right? But this is how these anti-black racists are. We made it possible for them to get here. And when they do, they feel insecure about it because we are the most oppressed people on earth, and yet we managed to create a circumstance that they were unable to back home. So they overcompensate for this insecurity by attacking the very people who helped them. And does anyone want to talk about the Somalian single mother rate? There's no hard figures on that. Social media throws around 30,000 or so with nothing to back it up. But do you really want to dig into that particular can of worms? And this is the cherry on top. Now we suddenly have the same people who spent the last 100 years saying we're not black, don't call us black, and now they're calling themselves the blackest immigrant community.
To President Trump and the base that is attacking our community, we understand that you are here to divide us, to create fear amongst us, and to selectively target the blackest immigrant and Muslim community in this great state.
Individuals like this need to be talking to that imam and checking him and telling him that he's out of line for what the hell he was saying, not just because it's disrespectful, because it's a pack of lies. But then again, as we've already noted, when it comes time to talk about black folks, on the few occasions that some of them actually mention the word black, they're only talking about themselves. And even then, it's not the entire community of Somalians saying it. It's just got this one guy claiming to be black, but only for the cameras and only because the orange man's targeting them. And yes, I have noticed that there are examples of Somalians who have pointed out that, yeah, they're aware of the whole idiots saying that they're not black thing and that they're not down with it. I understand that. That's why I started off by saying it's not everyone who's with the BS. Unfortunately, the majority are.
We are Somalis, not black. There, I said it. Alright, everyone is keep asking, why don't Somalis want to identify as black? It's simple. Somalis had identity before race. Alright? Our identity comes from our ancestors, not appearance. Yeah. Alright? Blackness is a Western category. Somalia is a civilization. Big difference. We're Somalis.
I honestly think that I'm black. I'm a black Somali man, but my partner over here doesn't agree with me.
Really?
Yeah.
So
I'm not black.
Pardon?
I said I'm not black.
You're not black?
No.
Interesting. So what exactly are you?
Us Somalis used to get violated in school. You say, oh, you got a big forehead and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's the reason why this sudden out-of-the-blue declaration that we are the blackest immigrant community, it rings hollow. The reason why is you cannot have 100 years of a particular group saying over and over again, me no black, I'm not black, definitely not like you. And then as soon as you get your butt in a crack, oh, I'm black, we're the blackest of black, we're blackety black over here. Really? Now all of a sudden you want to do a 180 and now you're claiming blackness? This is the entire problem. Somalians in particular deny being black to the point that it's a cliche. We don't even really have to post video examples of it. It's just common knowledge, heck, common sense at this point. But they need to look at the disrespect and the lies that they've trafficked in. You have a corrupt imam in a mosque telling lies about black Americans. Meanwhile, his own people are creating entire generations of orphans. And you've also had others from that same group who have been running around saying, we work harder than you black Americans. We work harder than you do, etc., etc. We're more successful than you. Really? On Minnesota.gov's website, they have a letter from a group calling itself the Council for Minnesotans of African Heritage. They wrote, quote, the Somali community in Minnesota is currently underemployed in Minnesota and also experiences higher rates of poverty than other groups. The most recent data has the Somali community experiencing a poverty rate of 58%, with 40% of the community unemployed or not in the workforce. Those are the facts and figures as given from an African heritage advocacy group. 58% of Somalians in Minnesota live in poverty, and 40% are unemployed. Now, this is a far cry from what Ilhan Omar was talking. She claimed the Somalians were productive, and while it's true that at least 60% are productive, it's also true that by their own number, nearly half are not in the workforce at all. And when this Minnesotans of African Heritage organization was talking about the Somalian community, they were distinguishing themselves from everyone else, including the foundational Black American community. That's what they meant when they said that these guys experience higher rates of poverty than other groups. They were doing what they've always done, delineating themselves. So be it then, because when we break down the numbers, what we see is in Minnesota, the overall black poverty rate is 22.5%, which is higher than it is for whites, but still 35 points lower than the Somalian poverty rate. And this is from the same Minnesota.gov website, by the way. And in Minnesota, the black unemployment rate is only 7.7% as of August of this year. And while that's higher than the 5.2% it was last year, it's still a continent removed from the 40% that it is in the Somalian community in Minnesota. As far as how many Somalians are on public assistance, I can't really say because there's no hard numbers on that, which is ridiculous. As much money as that state spends, and that's been defrauded and stolen, someone should be able to at least give some kind of figures. And yeah, I know the Orange Man said that 80% of Somalians in Minnesota are on some form of public assistance, and I can't really put any stock in that talking point because A, it came from Trump, which means there's an 80% chance it's a lie, and B, the number seems to come from a far right-wing organization called the Center for Immigration Studies. I've told you about these guys before. These guys are part of that whole constellation of white right-wing mouthpieces who you see on Fox News and elsewhere. These guys have billionaire and mega millionaire racist donors who pay them lots of money so they can spew all kinds of far-right talking points and pretend as if it's some sort of scholarship or as if it's somehow hard numbers when it's not. The official and credible poverty and unemployment figures from Minnesota's own government makes it totally reasonable that the number of Somalians on public assistance is significantly higher than other groups in the state. Now, is it 80+% high? Given the so-called source, I wouldn't bet any money on that. But the real question is, why can't the government in Minnesota give its data on that figure? Perhaps that's why they had so much money defrauded from them on public assistance programs. And this matters crucially because every single immigrant group who's ever come to the U.S. knows the rules of racism before they even get here. And in many cases, they come from countries that practice cultures of anti-black racism. And that includes the Somalians. They too have also gone overboard to push every anti-FBA lie there is to ingratiate themselves to the white power structure. Like 70% of black Americans don't know who their fathers are. And of course, the other perennial favorite to say that black Americans are lazy, don't want to work, they're all on welfare. This coming from the group who the Orange Man is attacking, specifically saying that 80% of them are on some form of public assistance. Because the kind of rhetoric that's been spewed by individuals like that imam at the beginning of this video, That kind of talk begs the question, how is it that the group that these Somalians have claimed are so lazy manages to have a poverty rate lower than the Somalians in Minnesota or outside of it, and an unemployment rate that's also 33 percentage points lower than for Somalians in Minnesota? When people like this idiotic imam try to call themselves saying black Americans aren't hardworking, well, we're harder working than the people trying to smear us. This is government information, by the way, which the government, both Democrat and Republicans, have already known, and yet they went along with the same false narrative that these foundational black Americans, well, they're just not hard workers, and they've also had their mouthpieces like Thomas Sowell and others selling the soap and pushing the lies and saying, well, you know, these immigrants come here and just work harder than black Americans do. That's the problem. It's a lack of character, you see. And by the way, on a side note, we as foundational black Americans have felt for generations that there's a lot of people in the Somalian community and others who have had an unhealthy obsession with us, especially when it comes to lying about us. There's more than a few in the Somalian community who just can't keep our names out of their mouths. But there's a second more important reason that I want to highlight this letter from these Minnesotans of African heritage. First of all, they're not talking about us. And secondly, they're making specific demands for tangibles from the government of Minnesota. They're talking about money. These are foreigners who are demanding the government of American state give them millions for job training and workforce development, but only for them. They specify this is supposed to be for us alone. And you don't see any Democrats doing like Kamala Harris and saying, I'm not going to do something that's only going to benefit Somalians. No! Instead, you have them with a bill in the state legislature to give money, and they're bragging about who's supporting it. Instead of relying on their superior culture and work ethic, they're going straight to the government and saying, give us some money. Why don't they go to the people like that imam and tell him to solve their unemployment problem with his grand wisdom? Come to think of it, maybe that's exactly what they did. Well, that would certainly explain a lot, wouldn't it? So when we tell these immigrants, including the ones from Africa and the Caribbean, that we know full well they're getting money for being immigrants and that they only stick up for themselves, this is what we mean. They're only speaking up for themselves. And then they're the same ones who say, well, black Americans need to be sticking up for us right now. And Democrats selectively cherry-picked immigrant groups to give money to and to bootstrap their local economies and to select to fund their political campaigns in particular, because this is racial warfare inside domestic borders. This is how these other groups leapfrog over us, because they get tons of money from the government from day one and from these political parties. And then they turn around and say that we're lazy, and they claim to work harder than we do. And worst of all, they claim nobody ever helped them. That's one of their favorite things to say. They see white society telling that lie and they go, well, we're going to go ahead and repeat it so we can ingratiate ourselves. Nobody helped us. They all say that they pulled themselves up by their bootstraps. Well, I guess that would be true if bootstraps were woven from checks. And they all claim that their parents came to the U.S. with no money, which makes no sense at all. There's no dinghy raft that can float all the way to the U.S. So if you made it to the U.S., it's because you had the money already, which most of them did, or because the U.S. brought them here, which was the case with the Vietnamese and Somalians after the events of Mogadishu in the 90s. And yet, these exact same immigrants claim that they came to the U.S. with no money whatsoever, didn't have a penny to their pockets, and that what they did was nothing but hard work. They relied on themselves. And that's what it is. That's what they keep saying over and over and over again. They say that they didn't have any money, and yet they managed to surpass black Americans in one generation. Isn't that what trash like Myron Gaines likes to claim? Isn't that the talking point that idiots like him like to spout? Then why is the poverty rate for Somalians 35 points higher than for the lazy foundational black Americans then? Why is the unemployment rate 33 points higher than it is for the lazy black Americans? If people are going to be coming from the other side of the world so they can come to the United States and start spouting stuff about black Americans all being lazy, then you better have something to back that up with. White power will let people tell whatever lie they want to themselves. Hell, white power will even help to signal boost and spread those lies. But white power already knows what the score really is, and when the time comes, they'll pull your card. And the time always comes. Somalians are advocating for themselves. They're not trying to get any tangibles for foundational black Americans, and yet at the exact same moment they're doing that, they're demanding that black Americans stand with them and support them, as if they haven't been denying being black the whole time, and haven't made it a point to denigrate and disrespect FBAs all this time. There are on-code Somalians, but we have to be honest, they're in the minority. Unfortunately, the idiot imam, he's in the majority. And before the climate between our groups can change, What also has to change is the lies and the disrespect that's been going on for so long. That strikes at the very heart of the problem. And also, if we're going to be talking about anything when it comes to policy, we're going to be talking about tangibles. So as long as everybody's deciding, hey, we're just going to be standing for ourselves, which is what everyone's been doing, then fine. Everyone will stand for themselves. And that includes foundational Black Americans. Everybody's got to go ahead and stick up for themselves. Everybody has eaten off of what we've done. Everybody has shown up with their hands out, and they've all gotten things for themselves while Black Americans got nothing at all. We cannot have a situation like that goes on any longer. And we certainly can't have any sort of relationship with any group who allows their so-called holy men to try to lend the good offices of a deity to anti-Black racism. That's what was really happening when you had that asinine imam standing before his so-called congregation in what's supposed to be a house of worship, a house of truth, and he was spouting nothing but lies and smiling and giggling because to him that was hilarious. Standing in the house of God and he's full of nothing but the devil. Well, we're not. We know what reality is. We know what the truth is, and we're standing on it. And here's the thing. Even if I did have a 2-second attention span, and I had a mushy brain that allowed me to do stupid stuff all day long without a pang of regret, I still would not be saying let's stick our necks out for anyone else. And here's the reason why. No matter how much kvetching and wringing of hands is going on, you still got these exact same groups who the orange man said were garbage, and they're waiting to see if they can get their honorary dark-skinned Caucasian card back. It's just like what's been going on with the Hispanic community. Yeah, they're unhappy about what ICE is doing, but at the end of the day, they're still identifying themselves as white on their driver's license forms, on the census forms, on school applications, job applications. So as far as they're concerned, Trump's attitude is the problem, not that there's some underlying fact that they've been lied to and lying to themselves the whole time. That's not the problem. The problem is Trump. This is just a bump in the road. As soon as he's out of there, or as soon as the midterm elections roll around, well, things are going to get back to normal. And what's normal? Well, normal is white power handing them some crumbs and helping them to leapfrog over Black Americans, which cements their place in the society as they see it. That's normal. At least it was for a while. But reality always gets the last word. And if you're not willing to face up to that reality, well, you better pray that whatever deity you answer to takes lies a lot less seriously than we do. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Wesley Monroe, LB, James Green, City Soapbox TV, and Walter Wilborn. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.